Today we're going to be talking about Wuthering Heights.
Oh my!
Kidding. That's like all that's on my feed lately. So I just thought I'd make a joke there. I have got you guys all set up here in a cozy environment. So here we go. These are my original pieces. Got my Pisces Rising and Rainbow Jelly. If you guys are interested in purchasing my art, stay tuned because I am going to be opening hopefully a shop at some point here. We are today going to talk about Rebecca by Daphne De Maurier. Buckle up because this is going to be interesting. Rebecca, it's a Gothic novel. It belongs to the same literary tradition as Wuthering Heights, Frankenstein, Jane Eyre. It tells a story of a young woman who marries a wealthy widower and she struggles to find her place as the new mistress of Manderley Estate. What it's really about is power struggles. Power struggles reveal how women must disappear literally and metaphorically to survive within a marriage that is structured by male dominance and female compliance. Maxim, he has a need for control. It's disguised as devotion for our young narrator, and then it comes out as violence for Rebecca. The narrator learns to equate submission and shrinking herself for safety, ultimately valuing validation from Maxim over justice for Rebecca. I'm going to go over the chapters so you guys, if you haven't seen it, you can kind of fall right in and you'll know where we're at. Chapter 1 to 4, we're introduced to a young girl who is in her early 20s and she's a paid companion. She works for an upper class woman. While traveling with this woman, she runs into Maxim de Winter, who is a wealthy widower in his 30s, late 30s. In the movie, it says 40s. In the book, it says 30s. From the beginning, there is an imbalance of power. He is older, wealthy, socially established, and then we have the narrator who's young, anonymous. We never really get her name, and she's economically dependent on the wealthy woman who's paying her to be her companion. She finds out through talking to Maxim that he was previously married, and they end up hitting it off. He takes her out for a drive and she asks about his first wife. He's very aggressive and sharp in the way he doesn't want to talk about it. It's kind of the first moment we see where he's establishing a pattern in their relationship. He dictates the emotional boundaries. When she's asked to leave by the lady that's paying her for companionship, the lady just wants to go to Paris. She goes to Maxim and tells him, and he's like, well, you're going to come with me to Manderley. She asks if he wants to give her a job, and he says, I'm asking you to marry me, you little fool. Which the line reads as playful. I think it's really him positioning her as naive and him as knowing. And the engagement unfolds at pretty remarkable speed. There's no confessions or vulnerable disclosures when they're interacting. There's no like conversation they have that feels like, oh wow, this is so cute. And when she does accept his proposal, the narrator says that she loved him so much she could not bear to be parted from him. Yet her language throughout these early chapters does reveal that she mostly just feels relief. I was grateful to him, grateful beyond words, and the sense of safety and certainty he gave me was more precious than any declaration of love. Narrator, she enters the story without a personal history or identity and is defined largely by her relationship with others. Even before she meets Maxim, she's the companion of this woman. Chapter 5 through 7, Maxim and the narrator arrive at Manderley. When Maxim and the narrator arrive, the estate is huge. She's greeted by all the servants. As she starts living there, she notices Maxim is withdrawn and he gets angry when she's trying to find out more about him. She thinks the reason he's being distant from her is because of Rebecca, his ex-wife. Maybe he's not over his ex-wife. His sister, Beatrice, tells the narrator that she's so different from Rebecca. And that comment carries a double meaning. To the narrator, it confirms her fear that she can't compete with the former Miss De Winter. But to Maxim, the difference is precisely the point. He wants the narrator to be gentle and insecure because it makes her easier for him to control. She also becomes self-conscious when she's at Manderley. She's hyper observant and she watches people's gestures and tones for signs of approval or disappointment. I think she has such little sense of identity outside of her marriage. These casual remarks feel like verdicts on her self-worth. In chapter 8 to 11, people from the neighborhood start visiting the narrator. She doesn't really enjoy these visits because she's pretty shy. We learn more details about Rebecca, who was famous for her beauty, her wit, and her charm. Even in death, Rebecca possesses a vivid social identity that the narrator feels like she can't really match. When she's on a walk with a character named Frank Crawley, he tells her, which Frank is the overseer at Maxim's estate. It's kind of like his best buddy. And it ends up telling the narrator about how Rebecca died. Her body was washed up miles away 2 months later, and Maxim had to go to another town to identify her body. The narrator confides in Crawley about her feelings of inadequacy to Rebecca. His response to this is kindness and sincerity, if I may say so, modesty, are worth far more to a man, to a husband, than all the wit and beauty in the world. It's nice to see that Frank recognizes the narrator's gentleness and sincerity. I do think that these two have a genuine connection, and although they've only spoken a handful of times, you can see him giving her a sense of safety. And that sense of safety comes from him seeing her. She's not super outspoken like Rebecca, and he doesn't think that detriments her. He thinks it's a good quality. That one day she might confide her inner thoughts to him and not to Maxim, her husband. Maxim's desire to control makes it impossible for her to truly express and share her thoughts. And so, back to my point, on one hand, it's cute that they have this moment, but then on the other hand, he's praising qualities make her a socially acceptable wife. At chapter 12 to 14, the narrator accidentally breaks a valuable ornament in the house and she hides the pieces in a drawer, which are later found by Miss Danvers, Miss Danvers is angry that she didn't tell her that she broke it so she could replace and get a new one. Maxim is kind of like laughing about the incident and thinks it's cute, even though in our narrator's mind, she feels very uncomfortable and clearly visibly in distress, and he is amused by this distress. Go through chapter 15 to 17, which a costume ball is discussed and proposed whenever Maxim and the narrator are around a table with other guests. And the guests feel there should be a celebration for the narrator's marriage to Maxim. Maxim remains pretty emotionally distant throughout this time. Have Frank Crawley come in, and he suggests that the ball would be appropriate, insisting that she deserves to be celebrated. Maxim eventually agrees to this, although his manner does remain kind of patronizing. At one point, he suggests she dress as Alice in Wonderland and scolds her for putting her finger in her mouth. At this point, the narrator is starting to recognize a dynamic forming between them. She reflects, I wish he would not always treat me as a child. I wish something would happen to make me look wiser, more mature. Would we never be together, he a man and I a woman, standing shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, with no gulf between us? Maxim possesses knowledge, emotional distance, and authority that he does not share with her. Now notice how Frank treats her with respect. They decide to host the ball. The narrator feels like this is a public test of her being mistress at Manderley, and she's excited. She is finally allowed to perform the competence that she is wanting to show everyone she has. She ends up asking Miss Danvers for help. Miss Danvers suggests a costume from a painting that's on the wall. Later at dinner, the narrator is deep in thought, and Maxim sees her looking deep in thought, and he says, I don't want you to look like that. You had a twist in your mouth and a flash of knowledge to your eye, not the right sort of knowledge. And then he continues by saying, a husband is not so different than a father. There's a certain type of knowledge I prefer you not have. He says, I wish you wouldn't treat me like I'm 6. And he asks, how do you want to be treated? And she says, like other men treat their wives. Knock you about, you mean? He's blame shifting and deflecting. He does not like seeing her deep in thought, raises himself above her as an authority figure, as a parent. So the narrator keeps that outfit that she was suggested a secret, and the night of, she goes downstairs with it on. Everyone sees it for the first time. For once, she's occupying space. She's finally being seen, Maxim suddenly turns white and orders her to go upstairs and take the dress off. He does not come to bed. I think the lesson for her at this point, being individual, is dangerous. Beatrice comes to the narrator's room. She tells the narrator that the reason he was mad is because she was wearing the same dress that Rebecca wore at the last ball. Maxim thinks the narrator wore the dress on purpose to piss him off. Yes. The narrator is immediately tied to Rebecca. The only available model for a powerful woman in that house is the one who refused to be controlled. 18 to 20, the narrator confronts Miss Danvers about Rebecca. And according to Danvers, Rebecca captivated everyone around her. Maxim, Frank Crowley, even her cousin Jack Favell. Men were mad for her. Meantime, a ship stuck 2 miles near shore of Manderley results in divers, and divers find the wreckage of another boat. The boat that they find, it's the same boat that Rebecca took out the night that she died. Inside of that boat is a body. Maxim confesses to the narrator that the body belongs to Rebecca. And he admits that he actually killed Rebecca in the boathouse, and he placed her body in the boat and deliberately sank it in the cove. And he, at this point, justifies the murder by claiming that his marriage to Rebecca had been a sham from the beginning. According to his account, Rebecca agreed to maintain the appearance of a perfect mistress while privately living as she pleased in London, entertaining lovers such as Jack Favell, her cousin. Maxim frames the arrangement as an intolerable humiliation and presents Rebecca's infidelity as the reason that he violently murdered her. He carefully shapes the narrative, portraying the murder as a tragic necessity. His account reframes Rebecca's refusal to conform as moral corruption and his own violence as an understandable response. And the narrator doesn't seriously ever question these events or this version of events. She feels overwhelming relief. The narrator reveals her emotional conditioning. Her greatest fear has never been violence or moral wrongdoing. Her greatest fear was that Maxim didn't love her and choose her. She doesn't really ask, what does this say about the man I married? Confronting the possibility that she married a cruel man and misunderstood the nature of their relationship from the beginning. This recognition would collapse the fragile identity she's built around Mrs. De Winter. Rebecca, she was an untamable woman. She wanted to have probably an open marriage because he certainly was controlling still. If you look at the way that he talks to the narrator and the way that he interacts with her, he probably interacted with Rebecca that way as well. A controlling man with violent tendencies, a powerful woman that cannot be controlled. Rebecca died because she refused to shrink to the standards and expectations that Maxim wanted from her. And then the narrator gets to survive because she does shrink and conform to the expectation of what he wants. So chapter 22 to 23, the narrator ends up going through a striking psychological shift. I've seen a lot of stuff on SparkNote that talk about she's gone from innocent child to confident woman. That's not the interpretation that I had got. Becca's fate casts a long shadow over our narrator's transformation. The narrator survives because she learns how to disappear. The rest of the novel, we go into this investigation. Maxim contends that she killed herself. Rebecca had killed herself. And the cousin of Rebecca comes in with a note that Rebecca had something to tell him. That night, she ends up dying, which he thinks is weird. She had something to tell him. Why would she want to die? It's kind of hard to know what to believe at this point. We end up finding out in her journal that she had an appointment with a doctor. And then everybody goes to the doctor to figure out what the appointment was for. And that's when the ultimate conclusion, she was actually sick with a terminal disease, cancer. And so she purposely tried to egg Maxim on to get him to kill her because she was sick. And with all the other manipulations that Maxim has done, I wouldn't be surprised if he cultivated this outcome and made a deal with the doctor that they all ended up going to. We're left just thinking that she must have killed herself because she had found out she had cancer. The other theory, her cousin, was that she might have been pregnant, and she told Maxim she was pregnant with her cousin's baby who she was cheating on him with, and she was threatening about taking his estate through that child that's not even his, because she said nobody would know the difference because we're married and nobody knows that I'm cheating on you. People say things in this story and then the actions say something else. Maxim saying he's a victim of Rebecca's terrible wifeness when he's really the perpetrator of a murder. And then the narrator and Maxim go on a vacation because that's what people say they should do, because it's just they didn't want rumors coming up from all this in the papers or what have you. Then they come back. Anderley, their home, it's on fire. It burned down. And some people suspect it might have been Mrs. Danvers that burned it down. Look at the building burning down in the end. It dismantles the illusion of this gothic romance. It shows that Rebecca's influence, the wild woman, the free woman, the independent woman, that's a race the narrator once struggled to define herself, is also burnt down. Now all she has is Maxim and her together, and she is Mrs. De Winter. That's her identity by the end. It's defined by Maxim. I really love Gothic novels because of the immersion in what feels like a different world than reality. Great book. I do recommend this one if you got through the whole video essay. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Put a comment below. Let me know if you liked what I had to say, if you agree or disagree with any of it. I always love getting perspective, new thoughts, new ideas. I also just love being agreed with too. So you can kind of do whatever you want. Have a great day, week, year, life, and I'll see you in the next one.